The year was 3008, and Earth had long been thought of as a dead world. Cities once bustling with life were now nothing more than empty ruins, slowly being reclaimed by nature. The people who had once lived there, who had built the world's wonders, were gone. Everyone believed humanity had been wiped out, a memory lost to time. But deep beneath the surface of the planet, something stirred. Far below the surface, in an old underground facility hidden away from the world above, an ancient machine flickered to life. It was a relic of the past, built by humanity long before its fall. The machine, forgotten and ignored for centuries, sent out a single, quiet signal into the empty void of space. The message was simple, yet powerful. Humanity is not gone. Above ground, a lone figure was the first to hear it. A survivor. They had lived in the shadows for years, unknown to the world, hidden away in a secret, forgotten place. This person, who didn't even know their own name, had survived when the rest of humanity had been lost. They had always wondered why they were spared. They didn't know if they were the last human alive, or if there were others out there. But that signal, weak as it was, answered that question. There was hope. The survivor's heart raced as they listened to the message, the strange words echoing in their mind. The signal wasn't just a reminder that humanity had once existed. It was a call. The survivor felt something deep inside them awaken, a feeling they had long since buried, a purpose. They weren't meant to live alone in the ruins of the world. They were meant for something more. The question was what? The world outside was a wasteland, full of danger and mystery. Over the years, the survivor had learned to live in the ruins. They had scavenged for food, water, and anything useful that had survived the Great Destruction. They had found shelter in abandoned buildings and made a life in the quiet, desolate world. But always, there was something missing, something important that they couldn't name. The survivor felt a deep emptiness, as if a part of them had been lost forever. But now, that emptiness was starting to fade. The survivor knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. The signal was a message, and they couldn't ignore it. It was a sign. Humanity was not gone. Someone had sent it. Someone wanted to be found. The survivor stood in the remains of an old city, staring at the faded skyline that had once been a symbol of human achievement. Now it was nothing more than a broken memory. The buildings that had reached for the sky were now nothing more than jagged skeletons, their glass windows shattered, and their steel frames rusted and bent. The streets were empty, filled only with dust and silence. The survivor felt a strange pull in their chest, urging them to move. They didn't know where to go or what to do, but they knew they had to follow the signal. It was all they had. It was the only thing that mattered now. There was a sense of urgency in the air, as if time was running out. With nothing but a few supplies, the survivors set out on a journey they never thought they would take. The wasteland stretched before them, vast and endless. The sky above was a dull gray, as if even the heavens had lost their color in the wake of humanity's fall. The ground beneath their feet was cracked and dry, the soil barren and lifeless. Yet the survivor felt a strange hope building inside them. This journey, though dangerous and uncertain, was theirs to make. They didn't know what awaited them, but they knew it would be something that would change everything. As the survivor traveled deeper into the heart of the desolate world, they began to encounter strange remnants of the past. Abandoned machines, broken vehicles, and old technology littered the landscape. Some of it was familiar, things they had seen before. But there were other things they didn't recognize, technology far beyond anything they had ever seen. It was as if humanity had reached for the stars, creating wonders that even now lay hidden in the dust. But with each discovery, the survivor also sensed something else. They weren't alone. There were signs, small clues, that someone, or something, was watching them. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. Every so often, they'd catch a glimpse of movement in the distance, but when they looked, there was nothing there. The survivor was beginning to wonder if the ruins held more than just memories of the past. What if there were others out there, hidden away just like them? And if so, why hadn't they made themselves known? The survivor pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. The signal had given them a sense of purpose, but now they had questions. Who had sent it? Why now, after all these years? What was left of humanity? And could they truly rebuild what had been lost? The journey was long, and the survivor knew it would not be easy. The wasteland was full of dangers, both from the environment and from the strange forces that seemed to be watching. But the survivor's resolve grew stronger with every step. They were on the verge of something important, something that would change the fate of the world. And as they continued onward, one thought echoed in their mind. Humanity was not gone. They had been forgotten. But they were not lost forever. And now, the revenge of the forgotten was about to begin. The survivor's journey through the wasteland was both long and perilous. Each step felt as if they were walking through the remnants of a forgotten world, a world that had once been vibrant with life, now reduced to ruin. The signal had been a spark of hope, a whisper from the past that urged them forward, but they still didn't know what awaited them on the horizon. What could be left of humanity after 3,000 years of silence? The questions filled the survivor's mind as they walked, their boots crunching on the dry, cracked earth. Days turned into weeks as the survivor traveled across vast stretches of desolation. The cities, once grand and teeming with people, were now nothing more than crumbling skeletons, standing as silent witnesses to the passage of time. The survivor had seen many of them already, walking through the remains of what had once been a thriving civilization. In every place, there were signs of old technologies. Abandoned machines, broken vehicles, shattered windows. And yet, no people, no voices, only the wind and the echo of the past. Despite the silence, there was something undeniably strange about the place. The survivor had begun to sense it more strongly as they journeyed. It wasn't just the remnants of an ancient world that haunted them. There was something else out there. Something lurking in the shadows. At first, it was nothing more than a fleeting sensation, a feeling of being watched, of being followed. They would stop, glance over their shoulder, but see nothing. The survivor tried to dismiss the thought. After all, they were alone in this vast wasteland, or so they thought. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows across the ruined landscape, the survivor found themselves standing in front of an old, crumbled building. It had once been a towering skyscraper, but now only its skeletal frame remained, reaching up like a dying tree. The survivor paused and looked up at the building. There was something about it, something familiar, yet unsettling. A deep, ancient feeling surged within them, a feeling that whispered that this place held secrets. Against their better judgment, the survivor decided to enter. They squeezed through a broken doorway, their senses alert for any danger. The air inside was musty and stale, the remnants of old dust clinging to everything. As they moved deeper into the building, they stumbled upon a strange metallic door, partially hidden beneath a pile of rubble. It seemed out of place, different from anything they had seen in the ruins before. The door wasn't old like the rest of the building. In fact, it looked almost new. The survivor's heart quickened as they approached it. It felt wrong, but also oddly magnetic, as if something inside was calling them. With some effort, the survivor pushed aside the debris and opened the door. Inside, they found a narrow staircase that descended deep underground. The air grew colder, and the silence became even more oppressive as they descended. The stairwell seemed to stretch on forever, and the deeper they went, the more the survivor felt like they were moving away from the world above, from everything they knew. It was as if they were stepping into a forgotten chapter of history, one that had been sealed off from time itself. At the bottom of the stairs, they found a large underground facility, abandoned for centuries. The walls were lined with strange machines and consoles, still flickering with faint lights. The survivor approached one of the consoles, pressing buttons and pulling levers, but nothing seemed to work. The place felt ancient, yet strangely alive, as if something was waiting to be awakened. And then, in the distance, the survivors saw it, a large, central chamber, filled with rows of suspended cryo chambers. The survivors' breath caught in their throat. These were not the remnants of a forgotten world. No, these were humans, thousands of them, preserved in a deep slumber. For a moment, the survivors stood frozen, the weight of the discovery sinking in. This was no ordinary ruin. This was a hidden sanctuary, a place where survivors had been kept safe from the destruction of the outside world. But who were they? Why had they been preserved for so long? The survivor was filled with a mix of dread and wonder. There was so much to uncover, so much that didn't make sense. Why hadn't they been awakened before now? As the survivor moved closer to one of the cryo chambers, a low hum filled the air. The chamber's screen flickered, and a strange set of words appeared on it. Emergency protocol activated. The survivor stepped back, confused and frightened. Had something triggered the chamber to wake up? Were they the cause of it? They pressed a button, and suddenly, the chamber's door hissed open with a sharp sound, revealing a figure suspended inside, still in stasis. A human, alive but unresponsive, waiting to wake up. The survivor's mind raced. Who were these people? Had they been left behind by the rest of humanity? What was their purpose? Why had they been hidden away for so long? And most terrifying of all, what did it mean that they were waking up now? The survivors' thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sound of movement from the shadows. They spun around, heart racing, eyes scanning the darkened corners of the facility. A figure stepped into view, silhouetted against the dim lights. The survivor froze. The figure was humanoid, but there was something strange about them. Their eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and their presence felt like something out of a nightmare. The figure stepped forward, and the survivor instinctively reached for their weapon, though they didn't know if it would even help. The stranger raised a hand, signaling for calm. "You are not alone," the figure said in a voice that echoed through the silence. The survivor's mind raced. What did this person mean? How did they know they were there? And what was the purpose of this place, this strange underground facility? The mystery deepened, but one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. The survivor had uncovered a hidden world, a secret that could change everything they thought they knew about humanity's past. And now, the long-forgotten forces that had shaped the fall of mankind were beginning to stir once again. The survivors stood in the darkened chamber, the strange figure before them slowly stepping into the weak light of the facility. The air felt thick with tension, and the survivor's mind raced. Who was this person? What was this place? And why were they here? The figure, now closer, seemed human, yet there was something unsettling about their presence. They wore a dark, worn cloak that obscured much of their features, but their eyes shone brightly, unnaturally so. It was as if they had been waiting for the survivor, as if they had known they would come. The survivor tightened their grip on their weapon, but before they could react, the figure spoke again, their voice calm but filled with a strange authority. "You should not have come here alone," they said, their words sending a chill down the survivor's spine. "This place is not for the unprepared." The survivor, still unsure of whether to trust this stranger, took a cautious step back. "Who are you?" they demanded, their voice shaky but strong. "What is this place? And why are these people? Why are they still alive?" The figure's lips curled into a faint smile, though it did little to ease the survivor's growing unease. "You are standing in what remains of humanity's last refuge," they said, their tone cold and distant. "This facility was built long before the fall. It was meant to preserve humanity, to give us a chance to rise again after the destruction. But it seems you are not the first to awaken." The survivor's heart skipped a beat. "You mean there are more of us? More humans?" The figure nodded slowly. "There were many, and there are still some in stasis. But it is not just the humans you must worry about. The truth of our fall is far more complicated than you realize." The survivors' thoughts swirled, a storm of confusion and dread clouding their mind. The last refuge of humanity, a hidden sanctuary where the survivors had been preserved. But for what purpose? What had really happened to the rest of the world? And why was this figure speaking as if they knew everything, as if they held the answers the survivor had been searching for? The stranger turned, gesturing for the survivor to follow them deeper into the facility. "Come," they said, their voice softer now but still filled with that unsettling calm. "There is much to show you." Reluctantly, the survivor obeyed, stepping carefully through the narrow, dimly lit halls. They could hear the low hum of machinery in the distance, a constant reminder that this place was far from abandoned. It felt as though the facility itself was alive, watching, waiting for something to happen. The walls, lined with ancient monitors and control panels, flickered sporadically, as if trying to come back to life after centuries of neglect. The figure led the survivor to a large central chamber, where rows upon rows of cryo-chambers were stored in perfect order. The survivor's eyes widened as they took in the sight. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of stasis pods, each containing the human figure preserved in time, just as the survivor had found earlier. But these were not empty. These pods were filled with people, suspended in a deep artificial slumber, their faces peaceful yet eerily still. "What is this?" the survivor whispered, their voice barely audible. "Why were they left here? Why haven't they been awakened?" The figure's eyes narrowed as they looked at the pods. These people were saved, yes, but not for the reasons you think. They were kept here to protect them from the devastation that followed humanity's fall. They were placed in stasis to wait for a time when Earth could be reclaimed. But that time has not yet come. The survivor felt a chill crawl down their spine. Then why wake them now? Why wake me? The figure turned to face the survivor, their expression unreadable. "Because the galaxy is not as it seems," they said, their voice low and serious. "The fall of humanity was not an accident. It was orchestrated. The great betrayal, the destruction of Earth, it was not just the work of natural forces. There were others. Alien forces that saw humanity as a threat, and they moved against us when we were at our most vulnerable. We fought back, but it was too late. The power we had once held, the strength we could have reached, was shattered." The survivor's mind raced as they tried to process what the figure was saying. Alien forces, a betrayal. It didn't make sense. Humanity had always been a force of its own, reaching for the stars, creating technologies that even now seemed unimaginable. How could it have all been wiped out so easily? "Who were these aliens?" the survivor asked, their voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and anger. "And why didn't we fight back? Why weren't we prepared?" The figure looked away, their gaze distant as if they were remembering something painful. "We fought, yes, but we were divided. Humanity, despite its brilliance, was never united in the way it needed to be. We fought among ourselves, distracted by petty differences and power struggles. The aliens saw our weakness, and they took advantage of it." The survivor clenched their fists, feeling the surge of frustration. "So we lost because of ourselves." The figure nodded slowly. "Yes, but there is more to the story than you know. There were some, a group of humans, who foresaw the coming disaster. They built this place, this refuge, and they placed a select few in stasis to protect humanity's future. They believed that one day someone would come to wake them, to rebuild what was lost." The survivor took a deep breath, their minds still reeling. This was more than they had ever expected to find. The truth of humanity's fall was not a simple tragedy. It was a dark tale of betrayal, of weakness, and of lost potential. But now, standing in the heart of this forgotten facility, the survivor understood something else. Humanity had not been completely destroyed. There were survivors, hidden away, waiting to rise again. "How do we rebuild?" the survivor asked, their voice filled with determination. "What do we do now?" The figure looked at the survivor for a long moment before answering. "We wake them. We unite what remains of humanity. And then, We take back what was stolen from us. The survivor felt a flicker of hope. The journey was far from over, but now, for the first time, they understood their purpose. The past was gone, but the future, humanity's future, was still in their hands. The survivor's heart beat faster with every step deeper into the facility. The truth was becoming clearer, but with it, the weight of the responsibility was growing heavier. What had started as a journey for answers had now turned into something much larger. The survivor had stumbled into a war, one that stretched far beyond Earth's shattered remains, one that involved powers they hadn't even known existed. The aliens who had betrayed humanity were not a myth, they were real. And they had left scars on the Earth that still bled. The figure who had led the survivor to this point was quiet now, moving with purpose through the dark corridors, their eyes scanning the shadows as if expecting trouble. The survivor followed them closely, every nerve alert. They were moving toward a part of the facility the figure hadn't explained. Why hadn't they been told everything? What other secrets were hidden here, buried beneath layers of dust and forgotten memories? As they walked, the survivor's thoughts raced. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The signals that had led them here, the strange figure's cryptic warnings, and the overwhelming silence of the facility. It all felt like a carefully laid plan. But who was behind it? And what did they want from the survivor? The figure led them to a large steel door, thick and covered in dust. It looked ancient, a relic from an age that was now nothing but a shadow. With a single movement, the figure pressed a button beside the door, and the heavy mechanism groaned as it slowly opened. Inside was a control room, its walls lined with consoles and monitors, all dead. But there was one screen in the center of the room that flickered to life as soon as the door opened, casting a cold, pale light on everything around them. On the screen appeared a map of Earth, but it was not like any map the survivor had ever seen. This one was divided, cut into sections, each marked with strange symbols. Some of the landmasses were darkened, crossed out as though they had been lost forever. But there were areas still marked in bright colors, areas where the Earth's power had been retained or hidden away. These are the remnants of humanity's last strongholds, the figure said softly, their voice filled with an odd mix of sadness and determination. These are the places that were never destroyed. Hidden cities, underground bunkers, forgotten bases. Some of them have been forgotten by the world, but others still remain active, protected. If you want to rebuild, you must first understand that humanity was never truly wiped out. It was scattered. The survivor stepped closer to the screen, their eyes tracing the lines and symbols. And these places, what happened to them? Why weren't they protected like the survivors in stasis? They were protected, the figure said. At least, they were meant to be. But the betrayal didn't stop with Earth's fall. These strongholds, these sanctuaries, were infiltrated by the very aliens who destroyed our world. They were meant to be our salvation, but they became our prison. The survivor's stomach twisted. The betrayal was deeper than they had imagined. It wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for control. The aliens hadn't just wiped out humanity. They had taken the last remnants of it, twisted them into something else. "Why are you telling me this?" the survivor asked, their voice barely a whisper. "Why now?" The figure turned to them, eyes cold and distant. "Because you are the one who can change it. You are the one who can awaken the old alliances. You are the one who can rebuild." The survivors stared at them, disbelief creeping into their thoughts. "I'm just one person. How can I change anything? There are so many of them, those aliens. We never stood a chance against them." The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, they walked toward a control panel, their fingers flying over the dusty surface. As they worked, a low hum filled the room, and the lights flickered on. Slowly, the control room came to life, revealing a hidden network of communication. The figure turned back to the survivor, their expression more serious than before. "Because you are not just one person," the figure said, voice low and deliberate. You are the last hope. We had allies, yes, but they are scattered and broken. The aliens are strong, but they are divided. There are factions within their ranks, ones who do not believe in the destruction of humanity. There are others who will support you, but you must find them first. The survivor's mind reeled. Factions. You're saying there are others among them who want to help? The figure nodded. Yes. Not all of them are united in their mission to wipe us out, but those who would ally with us are hidden, and finding them will not be easy. The aliens are watching, always watching. The survivor felt a wave of exhaustion wash over them. The path ahead seemed impossible. The aliens weren't just a threat. They were a force that spanned the galaxy, controlling not just Earth, but entire worlds. And now, they were divided. But the figure had said there were factions. Could it really be possible? Could they convince others to fight for humanity's survival? We need to find them, the survivor said, their voice filled with a renewed sense of purpose. We need to find those who will help us. But how? Where do we even start? The figure turned, meeting the survivor's gaze with an intensity that left no room for doubt. There are hidden signals, secret messages embedded in the lost technologies. We can decode them, but you will need to be prepared for what lies ahead. The galaxy is not as you know it. The alien forces are vast, and their power is unimaginable. But if we unite what is left of humanity, if we can find the old allies, then, and only then, will we have a chance. The survivor nodded slowly, a sense of clarity rising within them. This was no longer just about surviving. This was about taking back what was lost, about fighting for a future that seemed impossible just hours ago. I'm ready, the survivor said, their voice steady now. I'll do whatever it takes. The figure gave a small nod, acknowledging the survivor's resolve. Then prepare yourself. The real battle begins now. With that, the figure turned and began typing furiously on the console. The survivor watched as lines of code flashed across the screen, the room filling with a low whirring noise. Slowly, a new map appeared, one that showed a series of coordinates scattered across the galaxy. Hidden planets, abandoned stations, rebel outposts. And at the center of it all, Earth, the place where everything had started. The survivor took a deep breath. The journey was only just beginning. The air in the control room was thick with anticipation as the survivors stood over the console, watching the map unfold before them. It showed a vast expanse of space, dotted with coordinates that seemed to pulse with an eerie glow. The survivor's mind struggled to comprehend the scale of what lay ahead. These weren't just places on Earth. They were scattered across the galaxy, remnants of a resistance that had long since faded into myth. But now, they were no longer myths. They were coordinates. They were hopes. The figure who had led the survivor here stood beside them, their face illuminated by the glow of the screen. These are the last of our allies, they said quietly, their voice grave. They are scattered across distant worlds, in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Some of them are well hidden, others are in plain sight but surrounded by enemies. We cannot waste time. Every second counts. The survivor nodded, feeling the weight of their words. Every second counted. Humanity's future, what was left of it, rested on the shoulders of someone who had never expected to find themselves in this position. The survivor had come to this place seeking answers, but now they had a mission, a purpose, and it was nothing short of impossible. Where do we start? The survivor asked, their voice steady but filled with uncertainty. The figure's eyes flicked to the map, scanning the coordinates. We start with the closest one. The first signal, the one that still sends out a message every few years, hoping someone will hear it. The survivor's heart quickened. There was hope then. A chance. The figure tapped a series of buttons, and the map zoomed in on a small, isolated planet located on the outer rim of the galaxy. It was a barren world, its surface dotted with craters and broken landscapes. But there was something else, the unmistakable glow of ancient technology. A remnant of the past, perhaps, or something more. "This is where we begin," the figure said. "The signal originates here. Someone must have kept it alive, despite the decades of silence. We will find them." The survivors stared at the planet, their thoughts racing. The journey would be long, perilous, and filled with danger. The alien forces were vast, their influence stretching across the stars. Every planet, every station, every ship was potentially crawling with their spies, their soldiers. The survivor would have to be sharp, smart, and most importantly, unseen. "How do we get there?" the survivor asked. The figure turned, their eyes narrowing in thought. "We have a ship, old but functional. It's hidden here, in the lower levels of this facility. We've kept it in good condition, in case the day came when it would be needed." The survivor's heart leaped at the thought of an actual ship. A way to travel, a way to reach the distant worlds. "Lead the way," they said, determination building within them. The figure nodded and turned, leading the survivor through the labyrinthine corridors of the facility. They passed rooms filled with more relics of the past, old technology, weapons, and supplies, all carefully preserved for the day when humanity would rise again. The survivor couldn't help but marvel at how much was still here, how much was left of the old world. There was so much potential, so much to rebuild, but the survivor couldn't linger on those thoughts. The task at hand was far too urgent. They finally reached a large open hangar, and there, in the center of the room, stood the ship. It was smaller than the ships of the past, sleek and compact, built for speed and stealth rather than brute force. The survivor could tell it had been designed for a specific purpose: to move undetected, to slip through enemy lines without leaving a trace. "It's not much, but it will get us where we need to go," the figure said, walking toward the ship and activating its systems. The lights inside flickered on, casting a soft blue glow over the cockpit and the control panels. The survivor felt a surge of hope, a flicker of something that had long been buried deep inside them. The figure led the survivor inside, and they both strapped into the seats. The hum of the ship's engines came to life, a low, steady vibration beneath their feet. The doors of the hangar slowly opened, revealing the vastness of space beyond. "Ready?" the figure asked, glancing over at the survivor. The survivor took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the mission ahead, the unknowns that lay just beyond the stars. But in that moment, they felt a surge of determination. This was it. There was no turning back now. "Ready," the survivor replied, their voice firm. The ship lifted off the ground, soaring into the dark expanse of space. The stars seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, a sea of possibilities. The survivor felt a strange sense of calm as they looked out into the unknown. This was what they had been searching for, what they had fought for. A chance to make a difference, a chance to find the survivors, to rally humanity's last allies, and take back their home. But as the ship glided through the blackness of space, the survivors' thoughts kept returning to the alien forces that had once destroyed Earth. They had learned about the betrayal, the war that had torn the galaxy apart, but the survivor knew nothing about the true scope of the alien threat. Were they really as divided as the figure had said? Were there factions within their ranks? Or were they a united front, one that would stop at nothing to crush any hope of humanity's return? As the ship accelerated, leaving the safety of the facility behind, the survivor couldn't help but feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on them. The journey ahead was filled with uncertainties, but there was one thing that was clear. The future of humanity rested on their shoulders, and they weren't going to let it slip away. The ship tore through the darkness, the coordinates to the distant planet guiding them onward. With each passing moment, the survivors' resolve hardened. They had a mission now. They had a purpose, and they would see it through to the end. The journey through space was silent, but the survivor's mind was loud with questions. Stars streaked past the small ship like white rain falling across a black sky, yet no matter how fast they traveled, the weight of what was coming grew heavier. Somewhere out there, on a dead-looking planet in the outer rim, a signal was still being sent, faint, ancient, and waiting to be answered. What kind of people could have kept it going for centuries? What had they become after thousands of years of isolation? The figure who guided the survivor sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, eyes locked on the navigation display. They hadn't spoken much since takeoff. Perhaps they were thinking the same thing, or perhaps they already knew what waited on that planet. Either way, the survivor couldn't shake the sense that they were flying straight into something more than just a mission. It felt like a test, a turning point. When the ship finally dropped out of hyperspace, the world before them came into view. It was gray, lifeless at first glance. Craters and jagged mountain ranges stretched across the surface like scars. The sky above the planet was thick with dust clouds, making it hard to see anything clearly from orbit. But through that haze, something pulsed, a signal, faint but steady. It called to them like a heartbeat. The survivor leaned forward, eyes narrowing. That's it. The figure gave a slow nod. Yes, the last known echo of one of our strongest allies. If any of them survived, this is where they are. They guided the ship lower through the stormy atmosphere. Lightning cracked in the clouds, flashing over broken structures on the surface. The planet had clearly seen war. Buildings once tall and proud were now crumbling ruins. Strange metallic towers, half melted and leaning, dotted the horizon like broken teeth. It was as if time had frozen right after the final battle. They landed near what looked like an old command outpost. The signal was strongest here. The survivor stepped out of the ship, the air thick and strange. The wind howled through the wreckage, carrying a sound that made the skin crawl, like distant whispers. The figure handed the survivor a small scanner. This will help us find the source. Stay close. We don't know what survived here. They moved through the rubble together, the scanner beeping louder with every step. As they entered the remains of the outpost, a sudden jolt of sound echoed through the silence. A deep metallic thud. The survivor froze, pulse racing. Something's here, they whispered. The figure nodded. We're not alone. The scanner led them to a reinforced door, buried under debris. With effort, they pried it open. Behind it was a tunnel, dimly lit by old emergency lights that still flickered faintly after all this time. As they walked, murals on the walls began to appear, paintings of humans in armor, standing tall against massive alien creatures. Scenes of war, of unity, of sacrifice. It was a history book written in pictures. They remembered, the survivor murmured. They remembered everything. At the tunnel's end, the space opened into a vast underground chamber. And there, standing motionless in a circle, were them. Tall figures, human in shape, but armored head to toe in strange, ancient exosuits. They were like statues, perfectly still, coated in dust, their armor etched with the same symbols seen on the murals. In the center stood a beacon, the source of the signal. The survivor stepped forward, feeling both awe and dread. Are they alive? They asked. The figure studied the armor closely. They're in stasis, not dead, preserved, waiting. For what? For someone to wake them. The beacon suddenly reacted to the survivor's presence. It pulsed with a soft blue light, then expanded, projecting a hologram into the air. A man appeared, battle-worn, with eyes full of fire. If you found this, the hologram began, then we are not alone. We were the last guard of humanity's outer colonies. When the fall came, we sealed ourselves here, keeping the flame alive. We knew someone would come. One day, maybe not in our time, but someone would answer the call. The survivor's breath caught. This was the voice of someone who had prepared for the end and still believed in a beginning. We are the forgotten guard, the message continued. We carry the knowledge of the old wars, the maps of lost star systems, and the names of our enemies. Wake us, and we will fight again. The beacon dimmed. Silence returned. The survivor looked at the figure. How do we wake them? The figure walked to the base of the beacon, brushing off dust to reveal a circular interface. They placed their hand on it. A soft hum filled the chamber. One by one, the armored guards began to stir. Limbs moved. Lights flickered in their helmets. The dust fell away. Their eyes opened. They didn't speak. Not yet, but they looked directly at the survivor, every one of them, as if they recognized something. The survivor stepped forward. I'm here to bring you back. The fight isn't over. Humanity needs you. The tallest among them stepped forward. His armor was darker, heavier, marked with scars from battles long past. He removed his helmet slowly, revealing a face both aged and sharp. His eyes studied the survivor, then narrowed. You carried the signal, he said. His voice was rough, as if unused for centuries. The mark of command. Who gave it to you? The survivor hesitated. I found it. In an old facility. I didn't know what it meant. It means you are the last of the old blood, the man said. You woke us. That makes you our commander. The room fell silent again. The survivor could hardly believe it. Commander? Them? But I'm not a soldier, they said. I'm just someone who survived. The old warrior gave a slow nod. That's more than enough. Outside, the storm raged. But inside, the fire of an ancient army had been reignited. The forgotten guard had returned, and they had waited long enough. The silence didn't last long. As the chamber pulsed with new energy, the once dormant warriors of the forgotten guard moved with purpose, each one slotting into formation like a machine finally brought back online. Their armor, though aged and worn, gleamed with power as hidden systems awakened for the first time in centuries. The survivors stood among giants, living relics of Earth's final stand, now stirring for one last war. But war against what? The old warrior, now confirmed as their field leader, stepped closer to the survivor. You've done more than awaken us, he said. You've triggered an old protocol buried deep in our network. Enemy forces will sense this activation. How soon? The survivor asked. The warrior's expression was grim. Soon enough to make this place a battlefield. Warnings blared across the chamber as ancient sensors lit up, revealing movement in orbit. Enemy ships, sleek, alien, and black as shadow, were approaching fast. They had been waiting, lurking in silence, watching old coordinates for signs of life. Now, they had it. The revenge of the forgotten had begun, and the enemy knew it. The survivor turned to the figure who had led them here. We need to get out. Can the ship handle a fight? No, the figure replied quickly. But we won't run. Not yet. The forgotten guard had been ready for this. Deep below the base, in levels sealed for thousands of years, were ships, old human war machines, rebuilt and waiting. One by one, the warriors made their way to the hangars, activating launch systems with movements as natural as breathing. These weren't ordinary fighters. They were piloted by minds fused with ancient AI, born from a time when survival demanded more than human strength alone. The survivor followed, heart pounding. This wasn't the plan. They had come for allies, not for war. But war had come anyway. In the hangar, the figure opened a sealed chamber, revealing a ship smaller than the others, but unlike anything the survivor had seen before. It pulsed with energy, covered in a strange metal that shimmered in the dark. This one's yours, the figure said. It responds only to those carrying the beacon signal. You've been chosen. I don't know how to fly this, the survivor admitted. You will, the figure said calmly. It was made for someone like you. As they stepped into the cockpit, the ship came alive. Controls lit up, gently guiding the survivor's hands to the right places. The interface responded not to buttons, but to thoughts. It felt like the ship could feel their fear, their determination, their need to fight. And it matched them, pulse for pulse. Outside, the first wave of enemy drones entered the atmosphere. They were fast, silent, and deadly, black machines with red-lit cores, weapons primed to wipe out anything that threatened their rule. But they weren't ready for what greeted them. The Forgotten Guard rose from the ruins of history, not as ghosts, but as fury made flesh. The sky lit up in explosions as the first dogfights began. The survivor followed the warrior's lead, soaring into the thick of it. Their ship danced through fire and lightning, moving like it had a soul of its own. Every time the survivor thought they would be hit, the ship turned just in time, returning fire with pinpoint precision. The battle was chaos. Explosions rocked the skies above the ancient world. Wreckage rained down like metal hail. The warriors fought with unmatched skill, but the enemy's numbers kept growing. For every drone they destroyed, 2 more came. This was only the beginning. Then something changed. A massive shadow fell over the battlefield. An enemy capital ship emerged from behind the planet's rings, a carrier large enough to blot out the stars. Its surface bristled with weapons, its engines glowing with the stolen power of dead worlds. The warrior's voice came through the survivors' comms. That ship, it's the one that broke Earth's final line. I saw it. I fought it, and I watched it destroy everything. The survivor felt their chests tighten. This wasn't just another enemy. This was the monster that ended humanity. We can't beat that thing, they said. No, the warrior replied, not alone, but together, maybe. And then something impossible happened. All across the galaxy, long-dormant human signals began to activate. One by one, ancient relays lit up. Proof that the Forgotten Guard hadn't been the only ones to survive. The beacon had sent more than a signal. It had sent a call to arms. Ships blinked into existence from deep space. Old colonies thought lost forever revealed themselves, rising like phoenixes from the ashes of silence. Each one answered the call. A fleet began to form. The survivor stared out at the growing lights in the sky, hope blooming where only fear had lived. The final battle wasn't just for survival. It was for the soul of humanity. Every loss, every scar, every forgotten name had led to this moment. The survivor gripped the controls tighter. Let's finish what they started. Together, the Forgotten Guard, the lost colonies, and the new bearer of the beacon turned toward the giant ship. The enemy had ruled long enough. This was humanity's answer. A voice not of words, but of fire, thunder, and the unstoppable will to rise again. As the final wave of ships charged into the black, the survivor felt something deep inside shift. They were no longer just a survivor. They were a symbol. The forgotten had been remembered. And now, vengeance had wings.